Have you ever noticed how two sentences can say pretty much the same thing, but they just feel completely different? Well, that's not an accident. That choice, how you structure a sentence, can show who's in charge, it can reveal what someone's trying to do, or it can even hide the truth. Ah, this old chestnut. You've heard this one a million times, right? Probably coming from a politician or maybe a big company's press release. It's the classic non-apology. It just kind of floats there in the air, acknowledging that, yep, something went wrong, but nobody actually seems to be responsible. It feels slippery, doesn't it? Super evasive.
Exactly. That is the million-dollar question. I mean, the sentence is perfectly correct, grammatically speaking, but there's this giant hole where the person who actually did the thing should be. And this right here, this little sentence, it perfectly sets up the power that we're going to unpack today.
So that fuzziness, that ambiguity, it wasn't a mistake. It was a very deliberate choice to use something called the passive voice. And look, understanding the difference between active and passive isn't just about passing your next English test. It's about becoming a much sharper reader and a way more powerful communicator. Okay, so to really get the strategy behind all this, we've got to pop the hood and look at the mechanics. Let's break down the basic formulas for each one. First up, we've got the active voice. Think of this as your default setting for clear, direct communication. The formula couldn't be simpler. You have an actor who does a verb to a target. It's direct, it's forceful, and there is absolutely no hiding who's doing what. Let's see this in action side by side. The active voice says, "The jury convicted John Jones." Boom. Short, clear, powerful. The jury, the actor, is right there at the front. Now the passive version flips it. John Jones was convicted by the jury. See how it gets a little bit longer, a little less direct? So yeah, the passive voice basically flips the script. The target of the action, the person or thing receiving it, suddenly becomes the main subject of the sentence. And you can almost always spot it by its classic construction. You'll see a form of the verb to be, words like is or was, teamed up with the past participle, like convicted or made. And here it is. This is the secret weapon, the real trick of the passive voice. The actor, the one who actually did the thing, can be shoved all the way to the end of the sentence. Or, like in our mistakes were made example, they can be erased completely. Poof, gone. This is how responsibility vanishes in a press release or a legal document. All right, now let's get practical and build your toolkit. Because once you learn how to spot the passive voice, I promise, you are going to start seeing it everywhere. And then you'll have the power to decide if you want to change it.
Okay, this is my absolute favorite trick for sniffing out the passive voice. It's called the zombie test. It's simple. If you can add the phrase by zombies after the verb and the sentence still makes grammatical sense, you found yourself a passive sentence.
Let's give it a shot. The defendant was convicted. Okay, convicted by who? The sentence doesn't tell us. But can we add our phrase? The defendant was convicted by zombies. Yep, it works. It's totally a passive sentence. It's a fun and honestly a foolproof way to become a passive voice detective. So you spotted a passive sentence out in the wild. How do you fix it? It's just a 3-step process. First, find the real actor, the person or thing doing the action, and make them the new subject. Step 2, if that actor is totally missing, well, you've got to add one back in. And finally, step 3, just rewrite the sentence so your new subject is actively doing the verb. Now, after all of that, you might be thinking, okay, so passive voice is always bad, got it. But it's not that simple. It's not always a mistake. Like any good tool, it has very specific, very strategic uses. It's not about avoiding it all the time. It's about knowing when to use it on purpose. So let me just ask it directly. Is it always an error to use the passive voice? And the answer is a big, clear no. Let's look at 3 times when the passive voice isn't just okay, it's actually the better, smarter choice. All right, case number 1. Imagine you're reading this headline in a news report. What's the focus here? It's on the event itself, the robbery of the bank. And here's why it works so well. We don't know who robbed the bank. The actor is a total mystery. Now, sure, you could say someone robbed a bank yesterday, but using the passive voice here just feels more elegant. It puts the most important piece of information, the bank, right at the beginning where it belongs. Okay, now for a slightly more dramatic example. Let's be honest. What's the most important piece of information in this sentence? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not the lion.
And this brings us to rule number 2, use the passive voice when you want to put all the emphasis on the person or thing receiving the action. The headline here is the president, plain and simple. Putting the president first gives the sentence the punch and the urgency it desperately needs.
And for our last case, here's a very common example you'd find all over a scientific paper or some kind of formal report.
You know, in scientific and academic writing, the goal is often to sound super objective, almost detached. By saying the data were analyzed, you actually remove the researcher from the picture. It shifts the focus away from I analyze the data and onto the scientific process itself. It just creates that formal, impartial tone they're going for.
So, you see it all comes down to this. Choosing your voice is really about controlling your message. It's a conscious decision you make about the effect you want to have on your reader. It's all about writing with intent. Now, even though the passive voice has its moments, the active voice should absolutely be your go-to, your default. And why is that? Well, because it gives you clarity. It tells you what's happening directly. It's concise, so use fewer words. It brings accountability, clearly naming who's responsible. And at the end of the day, it's just more forceful, more direct, and more powerful. So now you have the toolkit. You can spot the difference, you can switch between them when you need to, and you understand the strategic reason for picking one over the other. You can see when language is being used to maybe hide something, and you can make your own writing that much stronger. You know the code now. So the only real question left is, what are your words going to do?